Welcome back to Weebology. Thank you, boys and girls, for coming to class. My name's Ricky.
And I'm Ethan.
And today we're going to be talking about a certified classic known as Trigun.
Yes.
You know, it's a sweet space western aesthetic with a really interesting and somehow pertinent story. We're going to tell you how so today on this episode 18. Finally legal.
Oh, dude.
To vote.
Oh.
I said, what did you think I meant?
No comment.
Yeah, get your mind out of that proverbial gutter. How you doing today, Ethan?
You know, man, it's been a real crappy day at work.
Oh, dude, you and I both. I have been up to my nips in code, like just real wading through lines of code. And you haven't had a kind of a busy week as well?
Yeah, like everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong at this point this week.
You just gotten beaten down by occupational
hazards,
literal hazards. OSHA is sweating at your just beating.
They're beating up all over.
Some OSHA guy is salivating like, oh, I'm going to catch this Ethan motherfucker. He's done. Oh, man. Yeah, it's been pretty swampy for me. This is my solace, man. This is my removal from...
Yeah, this is our solitary island in the middle of the freaking ocean. We got blue ass skies.
Blue ass content.
Yeah.
Don't know what that means, but you know what? Let's stop fucking around. Let's get to class. So we're doing today Trigun.
You've heard me in previous episodes mention that I was rewatching it.
Yeah, and I felt like I had to. And it's a lot of the classics that slipped off my radar because I maybe have joined the game a little bit too late. I remember like Yu Yu Hakusho is the oldest one I had watched up to a certain point, and
thanks,
then
Grandma.
Yeah, thank you, Grandma. You're the best, Mary Lou. But really kind of locked me into DBZ, and then I was like fixated on that for like a lot of my childhood. But then I'm revisiting a lot of the classics, and Trigun, after watching it, I would argue is no exception. It really was. I could see why it's very celebrated, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty certified fresh on the classic-ometer.
Oh, yeah, dude. Of all the anime, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands that have come down in the last 21 years, this ranks in the top, I want to say 250. This is a highly rated show, and I'd argue it shows.
Yeah,
honestly.
I think it definitely deserves that kind of ranking.
So if you can't tell by now, this is a bona fide spoiler warning. This will be spoilers for the 26 episode length of Trigun. If you feel like you do want to watch this, or you want to just hear what we have to say and just then go back after you hear our thoughts, take it either way. You know, we'd love to have you back after you watch it and hear our thoughts. But quick question for you. Hearing the spoilers of this show, do you feel that it would detract from your enjoyment? Say you were to be given every plot beat, every major turn or twist, knowing what you know now and having seen the show, would that deter you from going back and watching it?
No, so that's what's kind of cool about the show is it's sort of all over the place in like a very structured way. If that makes any sense, it shouldn't. You guys
Actually,
at home,
it kind of does.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Those of you at home that understood what I just said, I don't know, man. What's wrong?
That makes none of us.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is like there's a through line through most of the episodes, but they're like I feel like almost every episode is pretty self-contained in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I'm really happy about the kind of the way that the plot is structured because like I said in the beginning, it is a space western aesthetic. It's very of its own niche in terms of there's really no genre defining aspect to it. You can call it a western. You can call it kind of a spacey adventure. There's thriller elements to it. I wouldn't even call it. Is there slice of life in there? I don't know. I mean,
I'd say kind of almost
slice of life on another planet. So that kind of segue. You want to give a little synopsis about
first?
What we're
let me
doing
ask
here?
you a question.
Oh, okay.
Knowing what we know now, would you be Vash?
Would I be Vash?
You know how, like, when you're younger, you're like, I'd Goku, I'd Vegeta.
You know, I don't know if I would. I think I'd be more of a Wofford. Wofford, yeah. Wofford? I'm going to call him Wofford. So,
Woodford Revenge.
Woodford Revenge. But it's a Wofford. I would probably be more of a Wofford. And we'll get into the dichotomy of those two guys, but I don't know if I'd be Vash. I love him as a main.
So just a quick description of Vash before we get into the description of the show. He's like this weird superhuman thing.
Yes.
Disgusting at like shooting.
This man,
he's like basically invincible.
He rarely misses a shot.
So I think you could probably tell from this question and this answer that maybe there's more than meets the eye if someone's that strong and invincible, but we still probably wouldn't want to be them.
Right. It's interesting the way they've written. I think Vash is one of the...
Because I think everyone can agree you'd want to be you'd want to be Goku because that guy's a freaking thug.
He's a beast. He's untouchable. But I don't know. You're right. I with that question, I don't know if I would want to be Vash and all that he encompasses in both skill and philosophy and the way he lives.
So I think we're going to just go into kind of a description of the show, but I just wanted to leave you guys with that question and that kind of understanding that, there's maybe something that doesn't quite meet the eye.
Critical thinking.
Yeah.
We do critical thinking in this class. Would you be Vash? So what is Trigun all about?
So Trigun is a sci-fi western cyberpunk story.
Oh my God. You got more buzzwords for me?
Well, I think that's how I would totally describe it, man.
It really is, like, frankly.
So it's set on a desolate world. It's basically like kind of western, but more desert, less green.
Yes,
I would say.
Very minimal greenery.
It's pretty rough, and it takes a lot of tenacity and like people like working together just to live and survive in general.
You got to have some grit, you know.
Right. True grit.
True grit.
So the show kind of puts us in the perspective of these two traveling insurance agents.
Okay, and I love that because their job seems so menial when you say it like that. Our insurance agents are Millie Thompson,
yes,
and Meryl Streif,
yes, which is a sick name, by the way.
They're both pretty sick folk, and you know we got Meryl Streif as your typical kind of slender girl, height and build, and then Millie is built like a tank.
Yeah, she's like 6'7",
yeah,
easy.
She's like 6'7". She's like tall, as tall, if not taller than Vash.
I think she's taller than Vash, straight up.
Huge.
I think Vash is like almost 7 foot.
Yeah, she's an Amazonian woman. It's crazy.
Yeah, so they are employees of this Bernadelli Insurance Society, and they are tasked with basically assessing damages and looking for the responsibility of all these disasters happening in towns, said to have been created by the $60 billion double dollar man.
Wow.
The legendary outlaw, the human typhoon, Vash the Stampede.
Vash the Stampede. Now, we're finally at Vash in
So,
terms of the plot.
Right, so the world is very fearful of Vash, as he is described as demolishing whole cities and taking the lives of all these creatures, or all these people that live within,
Right,
with absolutely zero mercy. So the mythos about him is he's just a stone cold cowboy killer.
Right, and it's crazy that we are open. The whole show opens in a very brilliant way, where it's just kind of the saloon in the middle of nowhere, and the first couple lines of dialogue are all about the mythos of Vash the Stampede. And they did a really good job in the show at literally and figuratively the name preceding the man.
Right.
He's already been described as probably the most ruthless killer on the planet.
Right.
Full stop. And planet, I say very purposefully, because this is, in fact, as you figure out very quickly, this is not Earth. This isn't, because what it's called, a Thomas, that these ride these alien bird things around. It looks very Star Wars in design.
Yeah.
You know? So you learn very quickly, this is not Earth. And then we finally get to meet Vash the Stampede. Now,
he doesn't like mirror the mythos about him, does
right?
he?
Is he a stone cold killer, Ethan?
No, he's the coolest little,
he is
kindest bastard I've ever seen.
Sweetest man of all time, and it's fascinating. That was the moment in the show that I was like, okay,
right,
you got me.
I'm in. Like, I think it's kind of a slow first episode as a result of the atmosphere, but I still think is an insanely strong hook.
Oh yeah, because we have this. We've been basically it's a clever subversion of character development because we've been taught that I'm ready to watch. Okay, I'm buckled in. I'm ready to watch this ruthless killer go about doing his business. It's our main character. It's what it looks like it's gonna be, and then all of a sudden you hear the guy speak, especially in dub. And quick aside, who's the dub voice for this?
Johnny Young Bosch.
Johnny Young Bosch. And
what did he play that most people listening might know, even if they don't know a lot about anime?
So he was the Black Power Ranger in the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger show, the second rebit, because as you remember that, Saban Entertainment kind of did a little social snafu by having the black girls, the Black Ranger, and the Yellow Ranger be the Asian guy. So they switched it. Very, very smart PR move. But the one that the cast that we know and love in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I think mostly in the States, Johnny Young Vash or Bosch.
I wish it was Vash.
That was actually what I was hoping for too. It's kind of his debut breakout voice acting role. To this day, people say that's his best role he's ever done, and he really does a good job. I mean, Vash sounds like a sweetheart, very soft dude, spoken. And
so if you like Vash's voice, kind of look at some of Johnny Young Bosch's discography. You will be surprised how pervasive he is.
Do you have a couple
as
highlights
a voice actor in all these anime? He is actually Izaya Urahara.
No way.
Yeah, in Durarara. I believe he is in...
I'm not a dub boy. He's our dub. Ethan's our dub expert here in house. So
I believe he's in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
What? Okay, this guy's so this really was.
I want to say he's Ichigo.
No.
Yeah, dude.
No.
He's like voices almost everybody from a dub perspective.
I'm definitely gonna fact because I
could be wrong.
No, you could have said anything.
But I will tell you guys, he has done a lot of roles that you probably recognize.
He's played Batman, Superman, and he's played the Joker.
No, he might have been Light Yagami. Seriously, don't quote me on that one. But I know 1,000,000% sure that he's in like almost every anime.
Well,
from a dub perspective,
right? And if even a couple of these are true, I can tell that it was Vash the Stampede as a character that got him started, and for good reason.
Right?
It's such an awesome juxtaposition of the mythos of Vash, and his feats of how skilled of a gunman he really is, and then how well Johnny kind of made him when he actually spoke. Very caring, very sweet guy. And you learn very quickly that Vash the Stampede is nothing if not skilled, yet very unlucky in a way.
Right. And I wrote that as part of my description, is it seems like he's like just a magnet for bad shit.
It's just the poor man.
But it does end up by the end of the story making sense why. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're saying big spoiler alert here.
Right.
But we'll get to that a little bit later. But I think what I wanted to do was go through 3 things I really liked about the show.
Okay.
And then maybe 2 things I thought could have been better.
I'm gonna out you real quick. You said 3. I saw 4. And you're.
Did I?
I think you did.
I didn't, guys.
Okay.
Ricky's lying to make me look bad to our viewers.
He's calling me dishonest to make me look bad to you. You know what? Subscribe. Don't worry about it.
That was a lot of whispering. I don't know if any of it picked up.
You know what? Doesn't matter. Keep going, Ethan.
So are you cool with doing 3 good, 3 bad,
Hit
or
me.
2 bad?
Yeah, I got some thoughts as well.
Okay, so the first good thing that I really loved about this show were the freaking songs, man. The music
soundtrack.
Ugh.
It was Western through and through, but it had a little
Eastern vibes.
It had more of an Eastern hook to it, and there were times when it felt a little more rock based, and it felt like prog rock because it had kind of a sci-fi element to it, and every track was perfectly placed. And I said in my Fooly Cooly that while the soundtrack was incredible, some of the punk rock felt misplaced in that really tense kind of somber scenes didn't really warrant this punk rock. I still prescribe to the idea that Fooly Cooly's soundtrack, if listened in isolation, I would listen to that album all day, like that track.
And I have.
And he has. But with Trigun, the music was so spot on, every scene beautifully
Yeah, it slapped so hard.
It slapped.
And
slap certification.
I've got the 3 songs. Actually, I even did the research for y'all. So the main theme is H.T. by Dr. Donuts.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
You're telling me we have the legendary Dr. Donuts.
Yeah, Dr. Donuts himself.
Ripping tracks for Trigun.
He's a freaking PhD in donutology.
The man didn't earn his doctorate for nothing, you know? This man's out here spinning discs.
Right, so it's the main theme. Like that's what you see before every episode.
Oh yeah, that was a good track.
And then there's an atmospheric kind of song for most of the somber moments.
Right.
Where please listen to this on YouTube or whatever, because this song absolutely crushes.
Ooh.
It's called AJA Sound Life by Rem.
Oh, Rem.
Yeah.
Cool.
REM, but I don't think it's really REM.
Oh, REM Speedwagon. That's dope. Yeah, cool. Keep going.
Anyway,
I didn't realize to do it.
That is by far my favorite song in the show. And then my second favorite, which happens to be the ending song at the end of every episode, which felt super cowboy, super Eastern cowboy. It was so good. It's called Kaze wa Mirai ni Fuku.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Kaze wa Mirai ni Fuku is a slapper of a song.
Oh my god. Wow.
No, so what I would urge y'all to do is just search basically Trigun opening and then Trigun ending, and that'll get you at least directionally correct to those songs.
They were great musical caps for both of on each end of each episode. It was great. So.
Right. So that's one big thing that I loved about the show. The second thing I loved about the show was the atmosphere and the characters.
Yeah, let's go into that, because the atmosphere did a lot to, as a matter of storytelling, I love the idea of atmosphere. You know, Made in Abyss did this very well. Other shows like Black Clover with the demon skull kind of always looming in anywhere you look in like the boonies of the Clover Kingdom. Fantastic reminder of the overarching history of the land. Same thing goes for Trigun, because there was the concept of plants that people seem to build settlements around.
And by plants, it's kind of implied it's just a power plant,
right? And it's funny because they called it ancient tech,
right?
That we don't really know in terms of atmosphere. This planet were the plants already there, or was that human tech just from a previous generation?
Yeah, so that'll kind of work into some of my things I didn't like about it. They didn't explain a lot of this whole tech thing, and like they didn't really give you a good idea of like timing here.
Right, but we'll stick to the syllabus as we get further, and we'll get with more
syllabus. That's what's up, Rick.
Stick to the syllabus. But the atmosphere was fantastic
because it's nostalgic of like westerns that you would have watched when you were younger or whatever.
Oh yeah, not a lot of greenery.
Right,
there's some green space in there, and the green space that was in this show, there are even episodes centered around people coveting that space.
Right.
And
which is like super like Western.
Right. It's super Western, like a little oasis, and people wanted that oasis, and it was fought for. So it was clear that the idea of foliage life that was just in existence in terms of plant life and animal life was very highly coveted on this planet. So atmosphere was a really good aspect of the show to give us that old Western feel while throwing a nice dicey spy-fi.
Right, and I think the way that it was so desolate, really, I think built a lot of the characters, like made some of their reasoning for the way they were make a lot more sense.
Like people had to caravan with each other to get across these massive landscapes of just dry barren, almost to give you an air of, if you weren't in a caravan, you may be shit out of luck. Like, you might actually be dead in the water out there.
I think definitely they would say you can't make it from here to here without being on a caravan or without being... They had these, like, massive sand cruise ships.
Right, yeah. There was obviously had almost a Mad Max feel that, like, having a mode of transportation was almost the equivalent of food, water, shelter. Like, of how important it was to get from point A to point B, because you have a whole planet of desert to traverse before you have to go to... say a town that might have water. That's the best part, you know. So
So let's talk characters. I mean, I think we both freaking loved Vash. What did you think about Meryl and Millie?
You know what? They were a great juxtaposition. There was a very, if you want my honest opinion, it was a very male-heavy show, male-heavy cast, and they did a really good job of being a constant, kind of mixing it up. They're just out there doing their job, and then they started kind of understanding, Vash as a character. Things happened to him. He didn't cause things, he ended things. And sometimes that got dicey in terms of their job because they had to write all this stuff up.
Yeah, what I did really like about them is they kind of added more of an innocent lens to look at the world through.
Right.
So basically, I don't know if you felt this way, but it felt like the story was kind of narrated from their point of view almost.
And that was great because our perception of the world probably started out as black and white as theirs did.
Exactly.
And
this is exactly where I was going.
when we went forward with them, it only got more gray. And you can tell that Millie and Meryl, their perception of what is good, what is bad, who are the bad guys, who are the good guys, are we the good guys? It all started to kind of mix, and they started to question themselves. Are we really doing the best job? Are our jobs worth it? Are we following the right guy? Are we following the right tragedy? And so as we grew, they did, and vice versa.
Right, and the questions is he really to blame for all of these things?
Yeah, because it stopped.
They're really hard-hitting questions, and they really frame the show and what it is supposed to be.
Right, and I think that could have been a really the show I think would have done a little worse if we had done it completely from Vash's perspective. Take it out, you still have the narrative. You probably still have every episode, and it all would be all right, I think, if you just from Vash's perspective, just take both the girls out. But I think seeing their reaction and the audience playing off of them, their thoughts were kind of probably the same thing I was thinking as we went through the show. Oh wait, because I remember even texting you is Vash even
is he a bad guy?
Is he a bad dude? Dude, he's got $60 billion double dollars on his head.
Right.
And I think that also played to the magnetism of a misfortune that came his way. A lot of it was, we're going to literally mow this town down to get that.
Yeah, I mean, like I had mentioned in the description, there's this mythos about him that he wiped a entire city off the map.
Oh yeah,
and he also blew a hole in the moon. There's a lot of these big I guess crimes that they claim that he committed.
Right,
and that has really built his kind of air of danger and things like that. But I think if we didn't have Millie and Meryl, where they were sort of annoying at times because they're uber innocent in the other direction,
right,
in a place where we know not everyone is gonna be super naive and innocent.
If anything, people are pretty sinisterly savvy on this planet, and they're the outliers in a lot of ways.
They did an amazing job, in my opinion, of coming around to them and pointing out this discrepancy in the mythos and the actual man.
And they separated the two. Yeah. So that's a really good, I think, in terms of other characters, the designs were so cool. I
felt like everyone looked like Millie though. All the girls, Rim and Millie, I swear, are the same person.
Just different hair color. Essentially,
I honestly think they might even have close hair color. But I mean, that's fine, right?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I think getting into the next character is a good segue into what we had a chat before this episode about Ethan's good points, but we have Nicholas Wofford.
Yes.
Wolfwood. I don't know why it's Wofford. I think
they're all freaking called something like that, like that Wofford kid from Shin.
Yeah.
From that Grand Wise Boys.
Step aunt's
that
niece
that
child.
Yeah.
step niece aunt child. But yeah, Nicholas Wofford. There it is. So he is by all intents and purposes a traveling priest. And it's funny because he's also we had talked to him and Vash are very similar in their view of good, the protection of others, the protection of the innocent and the weak. But Nick's a little different.
Well, because I think they're both canonically good.
Yes, there's no denying
their paths are not the same.
Right, and I think that it's a good segue, and we can talk about both of them in your final good point, which would be the philosophy of the show and what they have to tell. The philosophies in this show. Very profound.
Well, we should probably... I want to talk about legato.
I'm gonna get into that with one of the philosophies.
Oh, you don't want to just talk about the characters straight up? Because I was thinking... There's 3 more characters. I think Wolfwood probably deserves a little bit more chat.
A little more juice.
Yeah, a little bit more firepower.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe in his Punisher's crucifix.
Oh God, it was so cool.
Legato is really cool.
Legato Blue
and
Summer.
Knives.
Yeah, and Knives Million. I looked up the names.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, so it's so we can go into Legato Blue Summer is the guy's full name. And
he's a terrifying villain
he's
got like mind control abilities
and telekinesis.
Yeah, it's sick.
Where did he pick that up? Did he get that from the other arm?
Dude, this is what I'm talking about. This is my in my bad points.
Okay.
Like people had all these powers and they never explain it.
Okay. So, we can't talk about Legato if we can't unless we talk about Knives because they kind of come as a set. In a way, right?
So the big villain organization is called the Gung Ho Guns.
The Gung Ho Guns.
And it is actually led by Knives, who is not one of the guns. He just basically is their boss. And Knives happens to be Vash's twin brother.
Twin brother. So this kind of gets in the second half of the mythos of the entire show, and I think it's important to talk about it here before we get into philosophies to really kind of lay the groundwork. So we find out about halfway through the show that, we get glimpses of Vash's body. The man is beat up beyond all repair. This man should not be alive.
Right.
So we find out that...
He's clearly not human.
He's not exactly human, and we find out that some of his mythos as Vash's Stampede is actually true. That he did, in fact, wipe a city off the map. He did, in fact, blow a hole into one of the moons of this planet. And it turns out that this planet was inhabited by humans from Earth about 130 some years ago.
Right.
From the moment in the show. And they had done so because, climate change, humans wrecked the Earth beyond all repair, so instead of trying to fix the Earth, too far gone, they ventured out in a project called Project Seeds. Humanity was the seeds. But it turns out that there were 2 man-made artificial human-like life forms that they had created that had a little bit more than humans. What are some of the ways that Vash and Knives were different from people, Ethan?
Well, they're invincible.
Pretty much immortal. That's the thing. They cannot be stopped. They don't age really. The thing is, they aged very quickly.
Yeah, they accelerated from infanthood to basically...
Teenish?
Yeah, low
There's
teenage.
only a word for pre-teenage, but keep going.
Yeah, so they progressed that entire length of what should be, 12 years in 1 year.
Yeah, they're certified geniuses.
Right.
Which is, they're untouchable geniuses intellectually. And they were aboard on one of these Project Seed ships with a couple of a whole crew and everything, and a girl named Rem. Now, Rem's very important to this show because I guess Vash loved her in a
so I think she took over as like a parent figure to them.
Yeah, that felt more right. It's very like, if not that, at very most like kind of a tween understanding of whatever. He was very affectionate. He was very affectionate towards Rem.
Whatever.
Let's leave it at that. And Rem had a very high horse up on her pedestal idea of, treating all people with respect and stuff like that. And I don't know, she kind of instilled in Vash this idea of, no one has the right to kill anybody or take another life. No one is intrinsically given that right. And Knives disagrees. And I think that's an interesting place to diverge in philosophy then, these 2 super beings, where one believes in the analogy they use in the show, say the butterfly's caught in the spider web, Vash would want to save the spider and the butterfly, according to Rem's teachings. But Knives, in a very logical way, says, squash the spider to save the butterfly. And in his...
And I think it's more of an innocence in Vash that Knives is unable to follow through with, because they both are seeing these bad things in humans
and want to do something about it, you know.
And one is seeing it as something that needs to be snuffed out, and the other one is something that, you know, has to be dealt with through nurturing, right? Which is Rem's teaching.
Right. And I think they both were definitely capable of this thinking. But I think because of the way the humans treated them in their quote-unquote upbringing, accelerated as it may be, they were definitely treated very poorly. They were, you know, beaten, and they're like, you're monsters. They're eventually called monsters their entire existence up to the point of the flashback, you know?
Yeah, I think it seemed like most of the crew was on board with them being their kid, basically. And then, you know, just like human prejudice started slipping into some of them because they're taking over their jobs, like, at a really young age. Like, the mechanic is the first guy to start hating them.
What was his name? Brad?
Brad
Asshole, that's it.
Right.
Asshole, that's it.
Dick Brad.
The man is a dick Brad.
And, no, so, you know, he's the mechanic, and Knives ends up learning how to become the mechanic at the age of, like, 11.
Right. Theoretically 1.
Right.
Yeah, because he's only been alive for, what, you know, a whole year and change, and it's like, yep, I can do your job. Like,
and I mean, just like, you know, humanity these days, if you start feeling like you're losing your usefulness or whatever, you're gonna get really cagey about it and stuff like that.
No one wants to feel obsolete,
right?
You know?
So I mean, that's basically the basis of the beginning of the prejudice against them on that ship, and that really, like, shaped them individually,
which is in
different ways.
Exactly. So they both took to it, and Vash, like we said, took to Rem a lot, and her teachings had much more weight to him. Had he not had Rem, very easily could have ended up like Knives, and Knives kind of became a little bit of a sociopath in his own, definitely, but in his own. And I think it had part intellect, part exposure to the human condition that really kind of tweaked his philosophy. And there it is. Like, that's our first look very deep into the show about how these two characters, their philosophies diverged, and the end result can be devastating, frankly. One turned into the hero of our story, and one turned into the villain from very early on. So yeah, we have Knives, who is the head of this organization, and then right underneath him is Legato, the cat, Legato, Mr. Blue Summer himself, and like we said, freaky villain. Yeah. I thought he was head honcho, dude. I think he is head honcho of the gun-ho guns, and then there was Knives, right?
But he came out of freaking nowhere. I was like, who the hell is this guy? Is he like his brother or something?
But dude, his character design, you know, he screamed villain, dude.
Yeah, he's bad.
He bad. Like, anyone who walks up to you with 3 spikes and a shoulder plate, you know, like,
get the fuck
away from me, dude. And he had a nice air of, you know, I think he still vibed people because he was still human, which is weird to me that he could, you know, telepathic and mind control and this or that, and he had a whole arsenal of power. But yeah, his philosophy, which was really interesting, was basically, yeah, I accept that Knives is a superior being, and
I'll work for him.
Yeah, I'll work for him. Literally give up all free will and thought. Who was the one who said that? The sax man said that?
It's a sax man. Yeah, I believe it was sax man.
He was like, yeah, when you work for Knives, you give up all free will and free thinking. I'm cool with that. Jesus, man.
Yeah, I think Chapel sort of said the same thing as
yes, well. You gotta have to just give it all up. So, I mean, that's a really good segue into the philosophies in this show are many and profound. I had a really good time at the commentary they had to say about a lot of interesting ways of thought. And I think the first one that was kind of omnipresent was, you know, what is good?
Right.
What is the definition of good? And a couple people had different definitions, Knives included.
Right. So there's essentially multiple main characters, whether they're villains or anti-heroes, whatever, but they all had their own version of what is the good, like, best way to deal with these situations. And what's really interesting, so Vash is obviously the more innocent way, saying, like, look, nothing gives you the right to take another's life.
He's like lawful good on the spectrum, completely lawful good.
Right.
Even in the face of his biggest villains, he would be adamantly against killing.
Right.
Which is, that kind of steadfast idea is something that doesn't really exist in this world as a concept. Everyone's willing to kill for something in this world. So he was that outlier. But when I was talking to you about this, and it kind of dawned on me that he did still pay a price. If you looked at his body, despite being immortal, the man was he's barely held together. He was literally in pieces.
Yeah, so he had like plates holding his like rib cage
literally his innards in. He was
these massive gashes. He lost an arm.
Yeah,
like that. He was just in a real sorry state.
So his philosophy is almost kind of that Jesus mentality, like
that or Naruto. Right? I will bear everything for everyone else kind of deal.
Yeah, everyone else will be saved and absolved. Just let me take the brunt. And he could do it in a very, very literal and physical way, being immortal, being essentially a superhuman. And they call him later. He's some kind of like bioplant organism mass thing, and it's very fascinating. But he knows he can. So he's like, you know what? I will. And that's great. And I think that's a very interesting way to look at it.
So he can physically do it. His problem is emotionally, it's taking a serious toll to watch all these innocent bystanders be affected.
Yeah.
And just like watching innocents be affected has taken a serious emotional toll on him. And there's actually various points when, like we mentioned, he blew up that entire city, or he is forced to blow up part of the moon, where he is so traumatized by it that he actually blocks out the whole situation in his mind.
It took me a long time to realize he wasn't physically forgetting. He literally made himself forget because he couldn't handle the trauma of causing
at first
that kind
I was
of pain.
having a hard time deciding whether it was legato, like making him forget.
No.
But then I realized the first one was Knives, who doesn't have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, this is obviously a
psychosis thing almost.
Psychosis.
And just thinking it now, a little off the cuff riffing, he also took the social brunt because there were all these other people after him, and there's a whole group of people that could have been blamed for the damage here, the damage there. But his mythos had built to a certain level that Vash the Stampede was responsible for everything.
Right.
And he was totally cool with it because better him than anybody else. This is not the way that Nicholas Wofford would live his life. He's a little different. Same premise, same I want to protect the innocent, the weak. He even has an orphanage, which is such a good boy. What a good boy.
Right, so his story begins in a different way where he's this kid who has a parent or a guardian or whatever that's abusive. So he ends up taking his life at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, he knows like nothing about the world. He's got nowhere to go. So he ends up going to the gung-ho guns, which is a hard thing to say a lot.
Not for me. How is Wofford?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Wofford's my linguistic issue.
Get off your high horse and come back down to earth, buddy. No, so he goes to the gung-ho guns and basically asks them like, hey, adopt me, quote unquote, and like teach me how to be like unable to be messed with like
just
that.
Rad, yeah.
And so he ends up being like a complete assassin monster, part of the gung-ho guns, like an underling of a gung-ho gun essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And he his kind of philosophy is more along the lines of Knives, in that, you know, if he can kill somebody to stop them from doing a lot of damage, you know, he believes that is a true good path.
Right.
And he's such a good guy, he's willing to like start this orphanage for other kids like he was, and just kind of like I mean, he is a genuinely good guy.
He is.
He has a different line that he crosses.
Right.
Than,
and I think
Vash.
He's under the impression that justice is decisive. There is no room in a true justice as being a warrior for justice. There is no room to think about a situation where everyone must live, because sometimes a decisive action, no matter how bad in practice, it's a very much a means to the end kind of thing. The ends justify the means. So there is a moment where he kills a gung-ho gang member who is disguised as a child,
The
And
gung-ho gun member?
Gung-ho-
See, it's pretty hard to say, isn't
what did I
it?
say? What did I say?
You said gang.
Gun-ho gun gang squad crew.
See, it's
team.
hard.
Fine. Gun-ho
Get
guns.
up off your high horse.
High horse trots. Gun-ho gun member that disguises himself as a child, but without thinking, the same way Vash kind of froze to think of a way to save everybody, he sniped the kid. And that was a good moment of the difference in the way they see justice and how they protect people, because no thinking, no nothing. The member is dead. The kids are safe. The girls are safe. We're good here, right? And Vash in an argument would say, no, you killed him. You didn't have to do that. You did a bad thing. So it's here where I would say I'm more, if I had the capacity and the skill in the situation, obviously I'm not going to go out with a fucking gun or anything like that and try to be a vigilante for justice. It's more of a, Vash is the kind of the idealist that I think people would want to likely be, but the realist a lot of people would be, you got to be decisive in a situation like that,
Yeah, and I think the biggest divergence in their two theories is Wolfwood does not have the kind of benefit of being an immortal superhuman.
Also true.
Right? So he has to make those decisions assuming like this guy will pull the trigger if he's pointing the gun at me type deal.
Right.
Whereas Vash can slow play almost any situation, and he can continue trying to talk his way out of it.
Do you think the Wolfwood's humanity kind of sees the gravity of that? Because he is human, he understands it more readily than maybe Vash would. Because Vash can take a mighty whooping,
Well, I think it's hard for somebody like Vash, or in any kind of media, you see these vampires and shit that live for 600 years. Well, they kind of lose a grasp of like the gravity of situations or the gravity of death, right? Because there is no death for them, right?
Yeah.
So, the getting killed doesn't really bother them because it's not like really part of the situation.
Exactly.
So I think it definitely shows his humanity, and kind of like, I think most humans that are watching the show, hopefully only humans are watching the show. Sorry, aliens.
No, I mean, if your dog wants to listen, like, woof, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, probably most people will, I think, align with Wolfwood's theories a little bit more, just because we're all humans. And, there's like a fear that comes from being in a situation like that Vash doesn't have to have.
Exactly.
His fear is anyone will get hurt.
Right.
That isn't him.
Exactly. And then there's Knives. And Knives is just like, humanity as a whole is evil. They're the spider. I need to snuff them out.
Exactly.
And it's because he sees the dark side of humanity, and it kind of sat with him. So he's much more of a dictatorial, like, generalist. Like, all humanity is bad. They all must be wiped out because it's clear that all the humans are dirty, vile. They're the problem. Which is a very kind of a...
But it's so cool to see the differing opinion between Vash and Knives, because they're both superhumans.
Right.
And they both diverge as hard as you can on the topic of humanity.
Exactly. So what is good is such an interesting concept. Should you take a life? The show explores this with not exposition so much. It's very much the characters interacting with each other. And I love that kind of storytelling. It's just the characters, when pitted against ideologies, how do they react in the presence of other ideologies?
Right, and it's not something that is uncommon for, real life humanity to run into these debates.
Right.
And these questions about like the sanctity of life and things like that, right?
Trigun does a really good job of kind of fleshing it out. In 26 episodes, it was a really concise yet comprehensive look at the human element when it comes to...
But what's so beautiful about it is it's still gray at the end, because it's never going to be black and white,
Ever. It's a world of gray for sure. And I know we're gushing about this show, but Ethan had some things that weren't exactly up to snuff for his liking.
I had two negatives.
I had one or two. Let's get into it real quick.
So my first one is the pacing of the show. It felt pretty long for 26 episodes.
Yeah,
to me.
I think that had something to do with us being dropped in the middle.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of this Western vibe, because obviously you can't just be like, driving around in freaking Ferraris and shit like that.
Yeah.
Or like, teleporting and stuff. But I think, it's
Nothing
a little
personnel,
slow.
kid.
I think there's a couple episodes in the beginning they could have done without. They could have really trimmed this down to about 18, and it still would have been really tight, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, once you know the scenario, you only need 3 episodes to show you that he's thought of as a bad guy and he's actually a good guy.
Yeah.
He's thought of as a bad guy, he's actually a good guy.
It's
and
also,
I got you.
Yeah, I got you. And I think the other part of the pacing is that they dropped the gun-ho guns in at, like, what, episode 13?
I think it was even later than that.
Right. And I think, you've tipped into a true anime plot when you have insert number, insert badass name, insert name of gang.
Right.
Villain organization. You've entered territory like that. You got Mob Psycho with the claw. You have I don't know. Trying to think of other things that have like you have organization. You got like the Quincy's in the later Bleach arcs.
He's got literal steam coming out of his ears.
It's been a rough week.
Yeah.
I gotta scoot the coat out of the way. Oh, you got the Akatsuki.
Nice.
Thanks, bro. But yeah, when you got a gang, you stepped into anime villain territory, and I think they did that super late in the game in this show.
Yeah, it was definitely late. Like, even kind of giving you, hey, the story's actually about this. They didn't do that till over midway, I don't think.
Right.
So I mean, they spent a little bit of time, like way too much time, in my opinion, building the mythos. Yeah. Because, I mean, at least I felt like I got it after 3 episodes. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, you had the understanding. I think the rest of it, maybe like episodes 4 or 5 all the way into like episode 10, was more establishing the state of the world rather than the state of Vash. Agree. And I think while there, like you said, there were episodes in there that helped, like the one about the coveted green space that those old people were like cultivating, and then some people wanted to come in and like take it, and they said, no, you have no idea how to run this land. You take this, we lose this. This is a treasure on this planet. And they're like, screw that, we want to make that cash, right? That cheddar, so give me the land. And that was a powerful episode for me because that really cemented for me, like, this is what's important on this planet, both to businesses and to the general people. I know for me, I don't know, I think something I didn't like about this show is maybe it's more of a personal thing, but I like a little bit of subtlety in my message when you're giving it to me. They really took the massive environmental message like mallet and beat me over the head with it in the later episodes. Like, humanity is the problem. Knives isn't wrong. Because they only had Project Seeds because, like, basically Rem outlined it to Knives and Vash that, so Project Seeds is about humanity going to other planets because we ruined our own. That's right, kids. She could have cocked her head to the camera and gave a spiel for 45 seconds about how climate change is ruining the planet, while still pertinent, probably even more so than the writer of the manga even thought. You know what? It's pertinent. I'm not saying it's not. It's very relevant to now. Kind of just lube me up a little first before you give me the environmental rod.
Ain't it?
It's a little ham-fisted. At least
it's
lube
like
it
Sarah
up
McLachlan
first.
In the eyes of the ages.
Far away. For like $15 a day, you too cannot go on a spaceship.
You can stop puppy slaughter.
Stop puppy slaughter.
Oh my gosh.
Stop the tree slaughter. Save the shrubbery. But that's more of a gripe. That's not necessarily a commentary against how good the show was. But that's my personal gripe. But you got any more?
Well, I felt that point was pretty forward thinking from them, because definitely in the early 2000s, I wouldn't say it was a big environmental like push in any direction.
Oh snap! Oh, Ethan, Al Gore's calling. It's crazy.
Yeah. Is he unsafe at any speed?
Yeah. Hold on a second. Hello. Yeah, Mr. Inconvenient Truth. Yeah. I mean, I can tell him.
Yeah.
I think he know. Yeah, he'd like a word with you.
Okay.
He hung up.
Hey, just
okay, never mind.
Really quick.
He hung up for you.
What's the internet? Sorry, Al. What's the internet?
He already hung up.
Oh,
he hung up 30 seconds ago.
No, I mean,
screaming.
Well, other than that, Yahoo. There wasn't a lot of people talking about it.
You are right. Yeah. So
my second thing I didn't like was they did not explain a whole lot. Like, they tell you all of these like cool things, like Legato's powers. A lot of the gung-ho guns were like deformed in certain ways.
That was weird.
This weird family of like giants they didn't explain at all.
Yeah, that poor sniper who had like that 100-yard scope was clearly deformed in the genitals because that man was compensating for something, dude. That man is like, look at my fucking barrel. He needed 13 props, like 13 bipods just to hold the thing up. And I wanted to walk up and be like, buddy, dude.
You could
like,
just kick it over.
Yeah.
No,
kick it over.
I don't know. I just thought, they show all these cool things, but then almost 99% of people are normal people.
Right.
And they never explain what the deal is there. And I just felt like that was like super random and like a big hole in, like that could have been such a cool like episode instead of one of these episodes establishing Vash is actually a good guy.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I think the one thing that I would like to have seen a little more of is this planet was only inhabited by people about maybe a generation, probably 2 generations prior. People alive could have still been like people alive could have remembered their parents have coming to this planet. It was that fresh for humanity. And I think they did a really, really good job of showing the strifes of a newly colonized planet and how people would get by, the struggles for resources like water and food and the lack of foliage, and you're not exactly on your home planet. I would love for some of those episodes to go into that more. People monetizing water and privatizing water. That would be something that would very much happen on a new planet, I love that aspect of it.
I think we were like a couple years into the story, so them going back and explaining that I think would have been hard. But I think what's a little weird is that most of the story is about beating these gung-ho guns, which are deformed, and they never explain that. Or they never explain the powers.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Knives and Vash, they throw you a little shitty explanation at the end, but they never really get into it.
Yeah, and then we have people that can control puppets from afar. We have people that, telekinesis. We have people that had their ability to move quickly through time. The Cyclops, what was hers with the crazy eye?
Who the freak knows, man?
I don't know.
They don't explain any of these cool-ass powers.
Because they are cool. They're very, very cool. And in terms of like a gunman, like gun folk.
I think we needed like a JoJo-esque explanation of their
needed a narrator. We needed a narrator in the back.
No, like the Nin one who explains everything about the Nin.
He's an awesome narrator. Yeah. Let's talk about that. But yeah, you know what? You got anything else to say about the show? I mean,
no, I think I want to go to like final thoughts.
Yeah,
if you're cool with that.
Final thoughts. Let's hit them.
What would you kind of rate it? You think?
Oh man, honestly, I would nestle it right under 9, like an 8.8.
Dude, I was gonna say an 88 gunslingers out of 100.
An 88 bullets out of 100. And that's the thing, for an older anime, it holds up surprisingly well. Remember, This anime is 21 years at this point old. This is an old anime. It's very, very well done. It's very well designed. It's very forward thinking in plot and in messages they have to say. There are things wrong. Some things feel a little dated. Some things are a little bit underexposed in terms of exposition. But all in all, very enjoyable. Tightly wrapped package. And Vash is one of the best main characters of all time. What about you?
Totally agree.
Wow, in depth. Look at this man, in depth. But
I mean, we just had 50 whole minutes of talking about how dope the show was.
Oh, our mics are on?
Oh.
Yeah, do you want to redo that? I think
Ricky, you thought we were just chatting?
I thought it was just riffing, dude. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not like I don't want to have a conversation with you. It's just that,
you only want to do it when it's on mic,
It just seems like it would be a waste. I mean, well, I didn't mean that. No.
I guess everything out of our mouth is gold. It's fine. It's fine. But hey, you know what? That's the show. That's class, y'all.
We freaking loved this show.
It really was. It's now I think it's in my top 15. It's in my top 15.
And we didn't blow a whole lot of plot points here, so I think you could still really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, we gave our commentary, and we didn't really kind of deviate. There's still some twists and turns we had mentioned nothing about that really solidified this show as well written, and I recommend it to anybody. Go have a good time with it. So thanks, y'all, for coming to class. Rate us 5 stars on iTunes, please. If you, where can you find us, Ethan?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, as well as many other podcasting platforms.
Yeah, and YouTube when we decide to upload stuff.
Yes,
but
we're pretty good on YouTube. Come on,
I would say so. Yeah, so if that's the way you absorb your content, do that. And like we said, 5 stars and reviews, huge help for us.
How about Instagram though?
Our Instagram is popping with memes. We get memes. We got little clips from the episode that week as a little teaser. So subscribe to us at Weebology @podcast on Instagram, and hit that follow button for
Weebology.podcast
@podcast@.com.gov
no, so
/.
He's
HTTP.
joking around right now because he's wrong, but it is Weebology.podcast.
We're not
and
linguists.
we sometimes post some little stories about what we're watching at the moment, so you could kind of follow along with us, see what we're like live watching. So that's pretty cool.
But yeah, thank y'all for coming to class. And I'm Ricky.
And I'm Ethan.
And this has been Weebology. Deuces!
Pieces.
You got one.